Welcome to the Right Academy. I am Matthew R. Miller. Once when I was an undergrad in college, this girl broke up with me and it really, hurt. It devastated me. So I wrote this ridiculous poem that now, if I'd look at it now, I'd be so embarrassed. But she had given me a rose or something. And then as she broke up with me, I threw it on the ground. And over time, the next couple of weeks, it kind of withered and rotted. And I wrote this poem about how that was my love withering away. I mean, it was so cheesy. Anyway, that's a symbol, right? That's a symbol. Literature, good literature, has symbol and motif. And I want to talk about that today, basically motif. A motif in your writing is one of the things that will separate great literature from just regular old plain writing, okay? Now, a symbol, as the name might indicate, it's an object or a thing or a time, or it doesn't have to be just an object, a place, a color. It can be anything that represents something else, okay? For example, let's take Harry Potter series. I refer to that one a lot because I think a lot of people know it. Harry had that scar on his head, right, on his forehead. That scar was a symbol. What did it represent? Okay, it represented on one hand, the literal event where Voldemort tried to kill him. So it's a reminder of that. But it also symbolized his mother's love, right? Because she basically reflected the spell and it hit Voldemort instead. So that symbol is always a symbol of his mother's love. But his mother was deceased during the books when he goes to Hogwarts. So this kind of like represents the wound of missing her. And then you could also argue it represents his tie to Voldemort. Remember that they had this psychic connection. So that's an example of a symbol. What about a motif? To put it very simply, a motif is just a symbol or a series of symbols that keep reappearing in the book, in the story. And they appear at times when it is necessary to draw in that symbol or to reveal something about the story or the character. So think about it that way. A symbol is something that represents something else. A motif is kind of like the set symbol showing up throughout your book, put it in a simple way. Motifs, you can definitely have more than one motif in your story. And you should. It's going to, when the reader comes to this, it's going to either subconsciously or consciously get the reader to think about a certain thing or feel a certain way. I've given the example before of the movie The Sixth Sense, where every time Bruce Willis appears, there's red, and every time the dead people appear, there's red. And so in the reader's mind, the viewer's mind, maybe a clever viewer puts them together, but even if not, the subconscious is thinking, wow, red, this represents something, maybe death or ghosts. Okay, so that when the big plot twist is revealed, it's not just totally tricking the viewer. It's actually been planned out. Okay, so let's talk about a few examples of motifs in literature. Lord of the Flies, this is a great one. So the story here is that some boys are stranded on a desert island, and it was a shipwreck or a plane crash, maybe a plane crash, but they basically devolve into these two warring tribes and become savages. And one motif there is fire, okay? Fire in that story represents a couple of things. It represents the fact that they still have some connection to their humanity and to civilization. After all, humans invented fire, or discovered it, rather. It also represents their kind of primal rage, is burning. You also have the pig's head on the stick that one of the tribes puts up. And that represents, among other things, a dehumanization, that they see the other people, especially the little chubby boy, Piggy, as pigs, as less than human. That's one example. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I love Charles Dickens, one of my favorite writers. He's not for everyone. He's very verbose and he's Victorian, but could be some heavy reading. But he, in A Tale of Two Cities, the two cities are a motif, right? The duality of life and of human beings. We are part good, part bad. Another example, in The Great Gatsby, the color green keeps reappearing. I've always seen this as two things. One, green refers to money because they're obsessed with wealth. Two, it refers to inexperience, like naivety. Something green is supposed to be kind of innocent or even naive. And I think Jay Gatsby is naive about what wealth will bring him. In The Lord of the Rings, there's a ton of motifs. One is night and day. And a lot of times Tolkien goes into a lot of detail describing the nighttime and the daytime. And that's supposed to represent, of course, good and evil, day good, night evil. And then there's a lot of drinking and singing. And that's kind of a motif of safety, friendship, the bond between these adventurers. So putting motif into your writing does require some thought. Okay, it can be something that comes naturally from our subconscious. That happens. And I've often made the argument that when writers write, just like when any artist creates, there are things the artist puts into the work on purpose and things that just come out from the subconscious that they may not even realize are there, but they are there. So first thing, if you're going to write motif, is to plan it out. Choose a symbol, choose a color, choose an object, choose a time, choose something that will represent something else and make it representative. Okay. For example, I don't know, some chicks in a bird's nest might represent youth and life and the progression of life as they age and become adult birds. Okay. That makes sense. But, if you had, let's say, an elephant's foot representing birth, that doesn't really make sense, does it? They're not related. So choose something that has a clear or logical connection to the other thing and plan it. Choose it and plan it. Decide that you're going to put it in different scenes. Whenever you want the reader to feel or think a certain way, put it in the scene. You can do it subtly, okay? Don't make it overly obvious. Do it subtly. Also, consider that the symbol of the motif doesn't always have to be the exact same particular kind of it. For example, let's take the one of the bird's nest. Okay, so if you want a bird's nest to represent life and growing up, use it. But you could also maybe have a puppy show up at the main character's house and represent the same thing. So sometimes a motif can vary. The symbols can vary as long as it's the same motif. Something else is to make sure the motif is related to the characters. For example, if you want to put a bird's nest as a symbol of birth and life and youth and growing up, don't just like randomly put it on top of a character's head for no reason, right? Have it naturally work into the book. For example, is the main character a bird watcher? Or do they live in a place with lots of trees and birds' nests are all around them? Did they, when they were a kid, climb up and find a bird's nest and accidentally kill the chicks? And now every time they see a bird's nest, they think about that. So make it occur naturally, organically into your story. Don't force it, because that will be too obvious. An example of a motif in a great work of literature, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. If you're not familiar, Dorian Gray is this character who's kind of like, he remains like eternally young, kind of, and he has this portrait, this painting of himself hidden in a room, and as he kind of loses his innocence, he places all the guilt and the aging and the shame onto the painting, and the person in the painting becomes older and more kind of warped and evil looking. That's a great example of a motif, but Oscar Wilde uses it sparingly because too much, it would be so obvious, it would become silly by the end of the book. It's kind of the mystery. It makes it almost a supernatural mystery book. So use it very sparingly. Be very careful about putting in your motif here and there. Something else you can do is when you choose your motif, let's just say it's an object, a physical object. When you insert that object into a scene, don't just leave it there and ignore it. Insert it into the scene in a natural way, and then somehow have the concept or the thing that it is symbolizing happen in that scene. For example, in The Lord of the Flies, the pig's head on the stick, that's slowly decomposing, and it represents the wild savagery of these boys and their animalistic nature. When the pig's head is referenced, then it's usually around in a scene where there's going to be some kind of violence or war or something terrible happening like that. And so it's not just randomly put into the book. When it appears, it's connected to a concept or an event, to something that happens. So be sure, if you're going to mention a symbol as a motif in a scene, that the scene has something happen in it related to that motif, to that symbol. Make sure the characters experience something related to it, or else there's just no point in putting it in there, right? It's just a random object in the background. So motif is something that you can put into your work, into your writing, into your story, to elevate it into literature, from just scribbling into literature. It's not super complicated, but you need to use it sparingly and be careful. So you choose something that's going to represent something else, You might, if you're a new writer, keep it to a physical object. Keep it simple. Something's going to represent something else. Sparingly, you put that object into a scenes here and there. And as that object appears in a scene, you have something happen in that scene related to the object. Okay? It's really that simple. Easier said than done? Sure. Like everything about art and creation, easier said than done. But that's the gist of it. So try putting some motifs into your stories, into your writing. Try sitting down, writing a short story, put a motif in it, and see if you can make it work. Because it's going to draw the reader in, it's going to produce emotional reaction in the reader, and it's going to, like I said, elevate your work. And I hope that helps very much. Please like and subscribe, comment. I'd appreciate it. You're watching the Write Academy with me, Matthew R. Miller.